Hello and welcome to all the attendees in today's webinar, which has specially been designed for you all. And I'm so glad to be welcoming you to this webinar. Let us take a moment to send all our positive thoughts and energy for the people who are under the brunt of the cyclone Nisarga, and we really wish and pray that they all stay safe and the cyclone passes away peacefully. In a very positive way. And we often associate stress with negativity. But today, we would be talking about stress into something that can motivate us and help us to reach our goals and live a life which is happy, calm, and relatively stress-free. So I would like to welcome the attendees once again. And during the course of my presentation, I would appreciate if you would type in your questions, and we would take all the questions and address them at the end of my presentation and talk. So with these words, let me start my presentation, and let's start spreading positivity all around. Okay. Right. So the topic that I have chosen today is make stress work positively for you. And this is often something we don't hear about stress. Something to be afraid of, something to shirk or shy away from. But today, let's give stress the due it deserves and also give stress a chance to make our lives better and remain happy, cheerful, tranquil, just like this lady in the picture here, who is in such a beautiful surrounding. She's enjoying nature and she seems very stress-free and calm. And today, that is what the objective of my talk would be, to address the issue of stress and provide you with the information which would make your life happier, stress-free, and also help you utilize stress in your enhancement as a productive force, as a constructive force, rather than as a destructive force. So let's begin. What is stress? Now that is a question which we've all come across in so many of our life situations, and we say, oh, I'm so stressed. A particular circumstance made me stressed, or a particular person is giving me stress. So basically, if I have to define stress, it is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from an adverse or demanding circumstance. When we perceive a threat, or when we perceive a kind of a challenge, or when we are faced with a situation which we perceive as to not being able to cope with, that is when stress creeps in. It is basically a body's method or a reaction to a condition. It could be an outside force, an external stressor, or something, a turmoil which is happening inside us, such as a threat, challenge, or physical or psychological barrier. So stress is a response of our body to a condition or a circumstance that we are exposed to. Now, what are the types and causes of stress? The causes of stress are aplenty, and we have our own personal struggles with stress. We have our own reasons which give us stress. We have our own circumstances which induce stress in our lives, and those causes vary from person to person. And stress leaves us drained, leaves us tired, leaves us in a state of despair. We are in a state of sadness. We are not able to enjoy the things around us. And all those factors are causes of stress in our lives. It could be a physical stress due to an injury. It could be emotional stress at family or at work. It could be a stress from an environmental condition. For example, the cyclone that is affecting the west part of India uh, must be causing so much stress to obviously the people who are in that situation, but also friends and family and other people around the country and the globe who are feeling for the suffering of those people. What are the types of stress? Well, stress has been categorized into three. The first is acute stress. Acute stress is caused by a sudden situation that we are exposed to. It is a reaction of our body or reaction of the person to a life situation which comes all of a sudden, or a new situation that we are in. It could be getting married, the stress of all the arrangements and things around. It could be starting a new job, so the stress and anxiety associated with that job. It could be a little quarrel or a tension we had at home or with somebody outside. So those are categorized as acute stress. Now, what is episodic stress? Episodic stress is something that occurs again and again when we are faced with a certain trigger or a stressor that gives us stress. Now, when that stressor is brought into our lives again and again, so we have episodes of that stress. For students, it could be the annual examinations. For performers, it could be a performance that they have to perform in front of hundreds and thousands of people. It could be a stress you have with a certain relative or distant relative. And when that stressor comes into your life again, these are episodes of stress. The third kind is chronic stress. Now, chronic stress is a life situation that you are in a constant continuum. It could be a bad marriage, it could be a bad job. Now, when that stressor or trigger is for a prolonged period and it causes you stress on a daily basis, then it gives rise to something called as chronic stress. So it's very important to address all kinds of stresses for sure, but it's very important for us to intervene before a certain stress becomes chronic and it could be very harmful for us. Well, you think you belong to the category of people and say, well, I have no stress in life. I haven't heard something like that in a long time, and neither has this robot, who I guess has his or her stresses of own, but this is on a lighter tone. Still, the first step in making stress work positively for you is addressing that you have stress, accepting that you have stress, and not being in a state of denial that there is no stress that exists in your life. The first step is always recognizing that stress, and only from that on we can start working on the stress part and helping it to be something that brings about a positive change in our lives. Therefore, either you are a superhuman that I haven't met in a long time and I would love to meet you if you have no stress, or you are in a state of denial. And therefore, I leave it to your best judgment to decide. Now, We are in a lockdown situation, which definitely is easing slowly, but we have to take proper precautions and tread carefully. COVID-19, along with so many other stresses in our routine lives, have given rise to an increased amount of stress in individuals. And it has been seen that stress levels have risen to alarming levels. And therefore, it's very important to address this issue and take it as an issue and help stress to help us. Rather than consider stress as a foe, let's consider it as a friend. I know it's easier said than done, and you must be wondering what she's talking about. But as we progress in the talk, I assure you, you will think of stress in a very different perception of what you carried when you came to this webinar. So we all are sitting on a bomb of stress, and before it explodes and breaks us, let's all address this issue and work towards relieving stress. Now, this is a question that's often asked as to how do we tell if we are stressed or in a condition of strain or tension. These are some of the physical manifestations of stress which help you define if you are having or facing stress in your life. When I speak about stress, there's a very important thing that I always stress on stress. You are the best judge about when you are feeling the best. And in case you experience something which you feel is not normal, or you feel that it is not something that is right, then there's always time to be alarmed and address that situation. So the same is with stress. If you have a peculiar kind of muscular tension, tight shoulders, back, or a jaw, these could be manifestations of stress. A headache, because a constant thought is going around in your mind. You are thinking about something and that causes headache. There could be gastrointestinal symptoms like acid reflux, a stomach ache, constipation or diarrhea for no reason. The blood pressure increases, which we have experienced it quite often. The heart rate increases. Now, increase of heart rate is associated with the response of our body, which we also refer to as the fight or flight syndrome. Sweating, dry mouth, and a dry mouth is something that is a interesting manifestation of stress, because you suddenly feel that your mouth is dry and you won't be able to speak, or things which are not normal. Heart palpitations or arrhythmia, lowered immunity, and lowered immunity these days is definitely something that we must address. We must address it normally, but these COVID-19 times require our special attention so we don't become more prone to infection. Now, having talked about the physical manifestations of stress, it's time to address the emotional manifestations of stress. Anxiety. Now, the fear of the unknown. What is going to happen next? How are people doing in the cyclone affected area? What will happen tomorrow? How will I perform, whether in an exam or at my new job or in a new marriage? All these factors contribute to a heightened level of anxiety in all of us. When we are stressed, our tolerance levels go down and we are prone to anger or irritability. And that is something that's not new. We have difficulty concentrating on things and forget things quite often. because at the back of our mind, we are constantly talking or thinking about that stressor, that trigger, about something that happened, about something that could happen. And all these things give us stress, and our mind isn't able to concentrate on the other important issues. Depression, a low mood, or crying. Fatigue, we feel tired all the time. We don't have the desire or the energy to do things. A withdrawn mood, we don't appreciate people talking to us. We voluntarily withdraw ourselves, become introverts. We feel overwhelmed. Now, this is a very common uh, emotional manifestation of stress because we pile on so much on ourselves and forget that achieving so much is ever so humanly impossible. And that feeling surrounds us, and we feel overwhelmed in that situation, and that gives us stress. It compounds stress. Difficulty sleeping, because sleep and stress are a vicious cycle, and we have to do everything to change it. Because if you sleep well, you will be less stressed. But when you are stressed, you don't sleep well. So unless we address this cycle and break it, it would be very difficult to stay stress-free. And we all have experienced this, that when we have a good night's sleep, we are well rested, we have a positive attitude, we are generally happy, and a bad night's sleep or a disturbed sleep makes us very grumpy, very sad, very irritable the next day. So it's very important to sleep well, which is a foundation of living stress-free, but it becomes very difficult to sleep well if we are stressed. So this is a very important aspect we have to address. And these days, given our lifestyles, given our hectic job schedules, sleep is something that has become hard to come by. And our smartphones and the time we give to our smartphones and technology have taken over the priorities that we should have addressed to sleeping. So I urge and encourage you all to try sleeping well, and you will notice a world of a difference in your stress levels. Another emotional manifestation is not having a desire to eat, reduced or diminished appetite, or it could be an increased appetite, which we refer to binge eating. And we've seen episodes of emotional stress in our time which manifest into holding a tub of ice cream and finishing it in one go, or a box of chocolates, and we think that would do us good. But let me tell you, sugar is the enemy of living a stress-free life. Therefore, kindly refrain from high sugar foods if you don't want stress to be constantly lurking around you. An increase in substance abuse has been observed when people are stressed, because substance abuse removes us from reality. It takes us to a world of make-believe, and people find solace in substance abuse, be it alcohol, be it drugs. Therefore, it's very important not to succumb to these pressures and pull us out of that well of stress and live a life which is healthy, stress-free, happy, cheerful. Now, the word stress, the first thing that our minds start processing or thinking is something to be afraid of, something to take it as a threat. And our response has to be immediate, of either fight or flight. Well, studies have shown, and an extensive study done in the US with over 30,000 people showed that the perception of stress greatly impacted the lifespan and the chances of anyone dying with stress. People who believed, people who perceived that stress did not cause any negative effect to our health or our selves lived longer and better than people who perceived or believed stress to be negative. Now, this is where my talk stresses. It is very important to perceive stress as a motivator rather than a demotivator. Our perception of stress would determine whether we allow it to have a negative impact on our bodies and cause us distress, or we allow it to have a positive impact on our bodies and cause eustress. Some of you might be aware of the term eustress, and some of you who are new to this word, let me explain eustress. But before that, let me just give you a pictorial representation of what distress does to us and what eustress does to us. The mere look of these two pictures elicit very different responses from us. One response is of something that gives us fright, gives us tension, while the other of these two smiling, cheerful children brings so much positivity into us. And a natural smile comes to our face. And that is exactly what happens to our bodies. If we perceive stress as negative, the bodies react in this way, as the lady holding the cup of stress. And if we perceive stress to be something that would motivate us, that would have a positive impact in our lives, it would cause our bodies to react as you are reacting by seeing the picture of these two young, beautiful, smiling children. Now, how? Well, eustress is not a very new term, but it is often rarely used, because when we talk of stress, the first thing that we talk is distress. I guess this is the time that we start addressing stress as eustress. Eustress means it's a beneficial stress. The term was coined by Hans Seal, who was an endocrinologist, and it consists of two words, Greek prefix "u", which means good, and stress. So good stress literally translates into something that is positive for us. It is the positive cognitive response which is healthy or gives one a feeling of fulfillment or other positive feelings. And it doesn't cause us distress, but it gives us positive feelings. Now, this is the power of perception that I was talking about. If we take stress as something that motivates us and takes us upwards, or if we depress ourselves, it would take us downwards. So the choice is ours, whether we want to be in a constant state of motivation or a constant state of depression. And no guesses here. I'm sure you would like to choose a state which uplifts you rather than takes you down. Now, having addressed the issue of eustress, distress, what is stress, now we would start by giving you options of addressing stress which would translate into a positive force in our lives. The first, we all know, whenever we are stressed, we take a deep breath, and that kind of, relieves the stress. A very effective technique, which if practiced regularly, helps us stay stress-free. It's the 4-7-8 breathing technique, which requires, and let's do it all together, it requires breathing through the nose for 4 seconds, holding the breath for 7 seconds, and exhaling with a forceful sound for 8 seconds. Now, at one time, it's advisable to repeat this cycle 4 times. And if you keep doing it regularly, you will generally feel happier inside and stress-free. Or this could be an immediate response to your reacting to a stress situation. When we are faced with a stress situation, our natural response is to react. So play and forward, you react. This technique is a pause button for you. So before you react, before you start feeling depressed, just pause, think a moment, do some deep breathing or the 4-7-8 breathing, and you will feel and think better. The second is Yog Nidra. Now, Yog Nidra is a topic in itself, and explaining the entire concept of Yog Nidra in a few minutes is extremely difficult, complex, and I would not do justice to the beautiful science behind Yog Nidra. But just to touch upon this amazing technique for stress relief and channelizing our stress in a positive way, this is a state of consciousness between waking and sleeping. It is like we often experience the going to sleep stage at night or when we are getting ready to sleep. And this makes us realize or creates an awareness of our selves. So we start from the top to the bottom, addressing each and every part of our body through guided verbal instructions, create an internal awareness, and that causes a total relaxation. This is an ancient Indian technique and is widely used in meditation. And this has shown to have miraculous effects on stress relief. Now comes music therapy. We all know when we listen to music, we feel relaxed. And scientifically, it has also been shown that relaxing music or a relaxing sound helps us produce alpha brain waves. And alpha brain waves are the waves which are produced by a relaxed mind. So a relaxing tune, typically rich in certain frequencies, are similar to these alpha type brain waves and naturally relax us. They also have the ability to reduce the stress hormones, largely cortisol, because we know that when we are stressed, the cortisol levels rise. Then it also helps in the release of endorphins, which are often referred to as the feel-good hormones. When we hear to a soft rhythmic beat music, it mimics a relaxed heartbeat and generally causes us to slow down and to breathe easy. The mind automatically follows in a so-called relaxation reflex, and this is a great therapy for people who are in chronic stress, and it helps to relieve the situation. Now, oftentimes we think that if we keep our emotions to ourselves, we would feel relaxed and less stressed, but describing your emotion and expressing your emotion helps to relieve the stress and takes the distress out of stress and causes it to become a eustress. Because if you speak to a person and the person comforts you, the person says it's all going to be fine, it generally helps you relax. So it's important to describe how are you feeling, why are you feeling this way, what can be done to feel better, and how do you feel now? So these questions, when you answer them, would generally lead you to a path of stress management and feeling of eustress. Now, these are some reformulation techniques that are extremely effective in helping us control our emotions. We should reinterpret an event or situation. By reinterpreting, we think logically and rationally, and then we are in a better position to decide whether it would be threatening to us or not. Normalize or condition yourself for a change which might cause stress. Reorganize, prioritize the information, reposition yourself. Now, this is extremely important. Sometimes we react to a situation or a person not fully understanding how that person might be feeling. Maybe we have misread their intentions. Therefore, it's extremely important to have empathy, to have compassion, and try to understand why such a thing happened and why the person reacted in a way that they did. And the phrase that I use here is put yourself in another person's shoes, and then you would be able to understand the situation better. Think positively. Now, I can is what we should start thinking from right now. The power of positive thought is miraculous. We should always nurture good thoughts. In impossible, I read, I am possible. Now, all these inspirational quotes, good thoughts, looking at the brighter side, looking for the silver lining in the cloud, and being an optimist help us relax better. Well, think negatively. Please do not take this out of context. It is not a contradiction, but it is a flip side of the coin. Now, when faced with a situation, if we think of the worst case scenario, we would feel better that it has not happened. Imagine what could have gone wrong and feel blessed that it is not half as bad. Now that immediately reduces the stress we are in. Condition the brain to think about the worst case scenario and feel positive that it has not happened. So the way you propel your brain to think, that would become your nature, and that would become how you start perceiving things in the future. Because the brain's response to a certain condition is totally dependent on how we think. So changing of the mindset from stress being a very negative thing to stress helping us to do better would help us a great deal. Sleep well. Well, this is something that I had touched upon when I was talking about the manifestations of stress. And sleep is definitely one of the foundations for good health, along with a healthy diet and regular exercise, which are equally important. And when we have a good night's sleep, our cortisol levels drop, and reduced cortisol levels are good for stress relief, because when we are stressed, the cortisol levels rise up. And sleep is a restorative process. Sleep is giving rest to our body. And when we are sleeping, the brain is flushing out toxins which have accumulated over the course of the day, and gives us an energized and refreshed person the next day. It reduces anxiety and depression by healing the system and preventing you from being emotionally sensitive, irritable, cranky, and the likes when we haven't slept well. Now, the intervention that I was talking about is when you feel stressed, we binge eat, we have a bad sleep, we have a disturbed routine and backlog of work. If we intervene in our perception of stress and we strike it at the response of stress, we press the pause button, we would eat well, have a sound sleep, we would be back on our routines, and we would break this vicious cycle of stress and bad sleep. Now, this is especially important given our lifestyles these days. We are not going to office, we are doing most things online. We also have Zoom fatigue, and we are actually giving ourselves too much of screen time, and we would have to control it somehow. It's a personal intervention, and I would encourage you all to cut down on your screen times, non-essential screen times, because while we are checking our work emails, we are surfing social media sites, it causes a storm of emotions within us, and they all contribute to stress and increased cortisol levels. Being so much aware, like news, WhatsApp forwards, emails, social media, we have an information overload, which is too much for the brain to handle. And all these news or information floating around isn't true, isn't authenticated. Therefore, we need to filter out. We need to limit our screen time. Now, there's this constant anxiety. Has anyone messaged me yet? How many likes have I received on Facebook? And we are constantly checking our smartphones. I would advise, please use the browser and not the apps, or turn off the notifications, because it's an every second, every nanosecond of notifications on our smartphones. And that is the FOMO syndrome, fear of missing out. I mean, we want to give so much time and be present everywhere virtually that we forget to live in the present and live in the moment. And we have resorted to binge watching Netflix, Prime, Amazon videos, and that causes too much of a sensory stimulation, which is a big contributor of not sleeping well. Because when we look at the screen light in the dark, our brain perceives it as something that it's not night yet and doesn't shut down or doesn't relax. It affects the production of melatonin, which is an essential component for sleeping well. Therefore, reduce screen time and let a natural production of melatonin kick in rather than having to resort to take supplements. Prioritize. Everything is not important, everything is not urgent, and everything is neither important nor urgent. Please learn to prioritize your tasks during the day, and this would help you utilize time better. Time management is very effective in stress management. So decide what you want to do now, decide what you want to do later, or delegate it to somebody else, but don't make it a contributor of your stress. It's very important to decide your goals. The what, the how, the when, and the where. Then the mission impossible becomes the mission possible. Because having your thoughts all over neither help you nor help in achieving your goals. Therefore, be very clear as to what you want to do, then decide how you would go about doing it, then prioritize when would you like to do it and where would you like to do it. And all these, when you answer these questions, they would help you develop a clear understanding and clear objectives as to what you would like to do. And you would not feel overwhelmed and stressed as to achieving things that you had wanted to do but you weren't able to do. Now, this is very important. I really love this quote. Half of the troubles of this life can be traced to saying yes too quickly and not saying no soon enough. Now, if somebody gives us a task to do, yes, we would do it. Give yourself a second. See your situation. See whether you can handle it, or it would later on contribute to a feeling of overwhelming. Learn to say no. I don't mean to be rude, but if you explain that you can't do it, set limits for yourself. We are humans after all. We are not machines. So it is not always bad to say no. The other person might interpret it the way they wish to. That is none of your concern. Learn to say no, and half of the troubles might just vanish. Now, this is one of my favorites. Live in the moment. Because every moment we spend stressing is one moment lost when we could have actually lived. And while we are busy in our jobs, creating a life for ourselves and our kids, this is life. We are missing out. Every moment we spend in things we love to do, in our own company, in the company of people you like spending time with, is life. So live life, not stress. Be present. Be in the here and now. Live your life in this moment. Fear. We have all come across situations when we have decided on the what ifs. We have become these, people who give these prophecies. We have become Nostradamus. We know what would happen, and we have decided this is what is going to happen. Fear of the unknown is one of the biggest contributors of stress. Fearing things that might not even happen are a total waste of time and your energy. We don't know what will happen, so why think about it or overthink about it? And oftentimes, the situations that we perceive would happen never happen. So take things at face value, stop fearing what if, and start practicing all will be well. Exercise. Now, exercise is a wonderful tool for the brain, for our health, and for reducing stress. And exercising gives us a feeling of euphoria. When you start exercising and bring exercise in your routine, you are generally cheerful, you are generally happy. And why does it happen? Scientifically, it has been proven that it produces endorphins, which act as natural painkillers. It improves the ability to sleep because we are so tired and also refreshed after exercise. And our cortisol levels go down because when you exercise, the cortisol levels are reduced and we tend to sleep better because we are less stressed or not stressed at all. It decreases the resting heart rate, it reduces blood pressure, and it reduces levels of the stress hormone cortisol. Diet and stress is a very important and vast topic, which is, again, it won't be prudent and it won't be justice to you if I discuss it in a short span of time. But still, I would give you 7 groups of stress relieving foods, which would help in creating a sense of well-being within ourselves and positivity and reduce stress. Please avoid simple carbohydrates, sugars, because they all contribute to our decreased function, and in no way they are mood enhancers. Complex carbohydrates, nuts, dairy products, poultry, ginger tea, green tea, avocados, oranges, bananas, asparagus, broccoli. These all have components which are extremely beneficial for reducing stress and brain health. That was a topic that I had addressed a few weeks ago. And we need a lot of time to describe how diet can impact our positive stress. But this is just to give an example. I would be happy to do a session on diet and stress if you want me in the future. But as a takeaway thought, I would leave you with the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. Think of the bright side. Choose to be positive even in situations of stress. Take stress as something that motivates you to do better rather than something that demotivates you to be disheartened or lose hope. Convert distress into eustress, and that should be our motto for our lives.